The office was still warm when I came back. My desk was gone. Not moved. Gone. The framed license that had hung behind my chair for 12 years was missing too. A new nameplate sat on the door. Not mine. Inside, someone laughed. My brother's voice. You know how he is. Good with paperwork. Just no sparkle. Another voice chuckled politely. I stood there for a moment. My access card still worked on the hallway lights. But not on the office. The lock beeped red. Inside, chairs moved. Coffee cups clinked. And my brother said something else. Don't worry. I'll handle the licensing side. That's when I realized something was very wrong. I had worked at that company longer than anyone except my father. 12 years. I helped build it when it was still 3 folding desks in a rented warehouse. Back then it wasn't glamorous. Just contracts. Permits. Compliance work. Licensing. The boring pieces nobody wanted. But they were necessary. Especially in our industry. If the paperwork wasn't perfect, nothing else mattered. No permits. No inspections passed. No deals closed. I handled all of it. Quietly. By the time the company grew into 3 floors and 40 employees, people started calling me the foundation guy. Not flashy. Not loud. Just reliable. My brother Daniel joined 5 years later. Daniel was different. Sales instincts. Sharp suits. Quick talk. Clients liked him. He could walk into a room and people listened. My father admired that. Said Daniel had energy. Eventually Daniel became operations director. I stayed where I was. Compliance. Licensing. The side nobody celebrated. It worked. Until about 3 months ago. That's when Daniel started using a word I'd never heard him say before. Sparkle. At first it was a joke. In meetings he'd say things like, everything's technically perfect, but we need more sparkle. People laughed. Then he started saying it about me. Not directly, but close enough. He's great with rules, Daniel would say. But the company's growing. We need leadership with a little sparkle. My father nodded. I didn't react. Because the work still needed to be done. And I was the only person licensed to do it. That wasn't ego. It was regulatory law. Certain approvals required a specific professional license. Mine. Without it, the company couldn't legally operate certain divisions. Daniel knew that. Everyone did. So when he began slowly removing me from meetings, I assumed it was temporary. When my name disappeared from internal emails, I assumed it was oversight. When my assistant was reassigned, I assumed restructuring. Until the day the finance department stopped sending me the regulatory reports. That one bothered me. Quietly. Because those reports contained filing deadlines. And if those deadlines were missed, permits expired. I walked down to finance. The junior accountant looked confused. Oh. Daniel said he'd handle those now. I nodded. Calmly. Did he request the compliance login credentials? She shook her head. No. He said the process was simple. I didn't correct her. I just thanked her and walked back upstairs. 2 weeks later I noticed something else. A client approval letter had been issued under my license number. But I hadn't signed it. At first I assumed clerical error. Then I saw the signature. My name. But not my handwriting. The letter had been approved through Daniel's office. I sat there staring at the document. Not angry. Just curious. People make mistakes. Even serious ones. But this didn't look like a mistake. It looked practiced. Like someone believed they could use my license without asking. And nothing would happen. I didn't confront Daniel. I didn't call legal. I didn't tell my father. Instead I did something simpler. I started checking everything. Every permit. Every filing. Every signature attached to my license. Because something had shifted inside the company. Quietly. Subtly. Like furniture being rearranged in a dark room. And when I finally stood outside that office door and heard Daniel laughing about handling the licensing side, the picture became clearer. So I stopped reacting. And I started watching.
For the next 10 days, I changed nothing. I came in at the same time, parked in the same spot, answered emails, reviewed contracts that still reached me. When Daniel passed me in the hallway, I nodded like always. He nodded back with the relaxed confidence of someone who believed the difficult part was already over. That made things easier. People get careless when they think they've won. The first useful piece of evidence came from the printer logs. Our office printers required employee codes for secure document release. Most people forgot that feature existed. I hadn't, because I was the one who insisted on it years earlier after a minor data leak. Late one evening, after most of the staff had gone home, I pulled the release history for the compliance printer outside my old office. 3 permit packets had been printed using Daniel's code. Each packet contained documents that should never have gone through him. 2 state renewals. 1 municipal operating authorization. All 3 carried my license number. All 3 had signatures that resembled mine only if you weren't looking closely. I made copies. Then I took screenshots of the log records and stored them outside the company server. That alone would have been serious. But it still left room for excuses. Administrative error. Draft copies. Miscommunication. I needed something cleaner. I got it the following Thursday. One of our long-term inspectors, a man named Victor, called my direct line instead of the main office. He had known me for years. He never wasted time. He asked why my signature looked different lately. I told him I wasn't sure what he meant. He read me a reference number from a submission filed 2 days earlier. I opened the record. There it was again. My name. My license. A digital seal assigned to my credentials. Submitted from an internal account that did not belong to me. Victor was quiet for a second. Then he said, "Did you send this?" I told him the truth. No. He didn't overreact. Good inspectors never do. He simply said, "Then you should look at the timestamp." I did. The filing had been submitted at 8:14 p.m. on a night when I was at home. I knew that because my wife and I had been at our daughter's school concert, and I still had the parking receipt in my wallet. I thanked him and ended the call. Then I checked the security system. The building access logs showed Daniel entered my old office at 7:52 p.m. that same night. He left at 8:21. There was more. The floor camera didn't capture inside the office, but it did capture the hallway. At 7:51, Daniel walked in carrying a red compliance binder. At 8:22, he walked out without it. The next morning, his assistant carried the same binder to records. I exported the footage. No commentary. No assumptions. Just timestamps. By then the pattern was obvious. But the part that stayed with me wasn't the forged signature. It was what happened Friday morning in the executive meeting. I was invited at the last minute, which almost never happened anymore. When I walked in, my father was at the head of the table, Daniel beside him, 2 regional managers across from them. A proposal was being discussed for expanding into a neighboring county. A major contract. Very profitable. Daniel presented it smoothly. He had slides. Forecasts. Launch dates. Then one of the managers asked a licensing question. Not a hard one. A basic one. Before I could answer, Daniel lifted a hand and said, "That side is covered." My father glanced at me, then back at him. Daniel smiled. "We've already streamlined that department. No delays." Department. Not my name. No acknowledgement that the entire expansion depended on a license he did not own and filings he had no authority to make. I said nothing. I just watched my father accept it. That was the betrayal, if I'm honest. Not Daniel. Daniel had always wanted the visible seat, the cleaner title, the room with the glass wall. That part was almost predictable. What I didn't expect was my father choosing presentation over reality. He knew how the company worked. He knew exactly whose credentials held those permits together. And still, he let Daniel speak as if I were a clerical inconvenience. That afternoon I checked one more thing. Our shared document archive showed 6 compliance templates had been accessed from Daniel's office over the past month. 2 had been edited. 1 was a signature page. The editor history showed my name had been typed into the approval block manually. Not imported. Not autofilled. Typed. I printed the audit trail. I saved the metadata. I stored copies in 3 places. Then I went home, sat at my kitchen table, and finally said the whole thing out loud to my wife. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, she asked only one question. Do they know you know? I said no. She nodded once and poured me more coffee. That was when the decision became simple. Not emotional. Not loud. Simple. Confronting them would have ruined everything. Once the pattern was clear, the next step was protection. Not anger. Protection. Evidence first. I spent the weekend organizing everything I had collected. Printer logs. Access records. Security footage. Submission timestamps. Audit trails from the document system. Each file labeled. Each one backed up in multiple places. 1 copy on a personal drive. 1 copy in encrypted cloud storage. 1 copy with someone outside the company entirely. I also printed physical copies. Paper still matters when questions become legal. Monday morning I arrived early. The building was quiet. Cleaning staff finishing their rounds. I sat at the small desk they had reassigned me 2 weeks earlier. Technically, I still held my position. Technically, my license was still attached to the company. Technically, that word had started appearing everywhere. I opened the state licensing portal and reviewed the authorization agreement again. Every licensed professional in our industry signs one. It allows a company to operate under that license. But it contains one very clear condition. The license holder must supervise the compliance work. If supervision ends, the authorization can be withdrawn immediately. Most companies never think about that clause. Because the licensed person is usually treated like the structural beam they are. Remove it, and things collapse. Quietly. Legally. I logged out without touching anything. There were still 2 conversations I needed to have first. The first was with Victor, the inspector who had called me earlier. We met for coffee 2 blocks from the office. Neutral ground. I didn't accuse anyone. I didn't dramatize anything. I simply showed him the filings that carried my license number but not my signature. He studied them carefully. Then he asked the only question that mattered. Did you authorize these? No. He nodded once and slid the documents back across the table. You understand the liability here? Yes. If you withdraw supervision, these approvals become invalid. I understand. He finished his coffee and stood up. Then document everything. That was the entire conversation. The second conversation was with a lawyer. Not the company lawyer. Someone completely outside our circle. A regulatory attorney who specialized in licensing violations. Her office was quiet, almost empty. Bookshelves, 2 chairs, a single framed certificate. She read through the documents slowly. When she finished, she leaned back and folded her hands. They're using your credentials without authorization. Yes. That exposes you personally. I know. She tapped the printer logs with a pen. And this appears intentional. Yes. There was a long pause. Then she said something that clarified the situation completely. You're not required to allow this. I nodded. What happens if I withdraw my license from the company? She didn't hesitate. Every permit tied to your supervision freezes immediately. Any filings submitted without your approval become questionable. Investigators will want explanations. From whom? From whoever claimed authority. Which was Daniel. And possibly my father. The lawyer prepared a document that afternoon. A formal withdrawal of supervisory authorization. Clear language. No accusations. Just a statement of fact. Effective immediately upon submission. I signed it. But we didn't send it yet. Timing matters. For the next 2 days I watched the office move through its normal routine. Daniel held meetings. The expansion contract was finalized. New clients were scheduled for onboarding. The company website even posted a press release about our next phase of growth. Daniel looked confident. My father looked proud. No one asked about compliance. No one asked about the license that quietly sat underneath all those approvals. On Wednesday afternoon, Daniel walked past my desk carrying another red binder. The same one I had seen on the hallway camera. He stopped and gave me a quick smile. "You settling in all right over here?" "Fine," I said. He nodded and continued down the hall. He never realized that the moment he walked away, I opened my laptop. I logged into the state licensing portal, uploaded the withdrawal notice, and scheduled it for activation the following morning. Then I sent a single email to the regulatory attorney confirming the timestamp. No threats. No warnings. Just documentation. Across the office, people were planning the launch meeting for the new county contract. Catering menus. Presentation slides. A ribbon-cutting photo opportunity. Daniel's office door was open. I could hear him laughing again. The same relaxed tone as before. The tone of someone certain that the difficult part of the story had already passed. They thought it was just another day. It wasn't.
Thursday morning began quietly. No alarms. No sudden chaos. Just the normal rhythm of an office starting its day. Coffee machines. Elevator doors. Email notifications. I arrived at 8:05. The withdrawal notice activated at 8:07. 2 minutes later, the state licensing portal automatically flagged every permit connected to my supervisory authorization. Not revoked. Not yet. But frozen. Any new submissions were blocked. Existing approvals required review. The system also sent automated notifications to the companies involved, including ours. At 8:14 my phone buzzed. An email from Daniel. Subject: Compliance Portal Issue. I didn't open it. At 8:17 the internal office messaging system lit up with questions from accounting. At 8:20 someone from operations hurried past my desk toward Daniel's office. Doors opened. Voices lowered. Computers clicked rapidly. Still no shouting. Just confusion. At 8:26 the receptionist informed Daniel that 2 inspectors from the regulatory board had arrived. They weren't angry. They were polite. Inspectors usually are. They asked to see the compliance officer responsible for the company's licensing submissions. That position was technically mine. Daniel met them in the conference room. I watched through the glass hallway wall as he shook their hands with the same confident posture he always used with clients. For a few minutes, everything looked normal. Then the inspectors opened their folders. Daniel's shoulders shifted slightly. Not dramatically. Just a small adjustment. The kind people make when a conversation stops going the way they expected. At 8:41 my father arrived. He had been called from another meeting across town. He walked quickly into the conference room. The door closed. No raised voices reached the hallway. But the meeting lasted a long time. At 9:12 the door opened. One of the inspectors stepped out and approached my desk. He asked my name. I told him. He nodded and said, "We'll need to confirm a few things with you." We walked to an empty office. He placed several documents on the table. The forged approvals. The submission logs. The same records I had already preserved. He asked one question. "Did you authorize these filings?" "No." He wrote something down. Then he asked another. "Did you withdraw supervision of your license this morning?" "Yes." Another note. His tone stayed neutral. Professional. There was no accusation toward me. Because the documents were clear. The misuse had been internal. When we returned to the hallway, Daniel was standing outside the conference room with my father. Both of them looked very different from earlier. Daniel's confidence had faded into something tighter. Controlled. My father looked older than he had the day before. Daniel saw me and stepped forward. He didn't raise his voice. He just asked quietly, "You pulled the license?" "Yes." A long pause followed. He seemed to search my face for anger. There wasn't any. Just the same calm I'd kept for weeks. My father spoke next. "You should have talked to us first." I thought about that for a moment. Then I answered honestly. "The law requires supervision." Neither of them responded. The inspectors continued reviewing files with accounting for the next 2 hours. During that time, several facts became unavoidable. Permits submitted without authorization were invalid. Expansion filings were suspended. The new county contract required an active supervising license, which the company no longer had. By noon, the regulatory board issued a temporary compliance hold on several divisions. Not permanent, but enough to stop operations until the situation was reviewed. Employees were informed that certain projects would be delayed. Clients began calling. Daniel stayed inside the conference room for most of the afternoon answering questions. My father remained beside him. Occasionally they looked toward my desk, but no one asked me to join them. My role in the matter had already been documented. At 4:30 I packed the few personal items that remained in my drawer. A notebook. A photo of my daughter's school concert. My old office key. I left the building quietly. No one tried to stop me. No one shouted across the hallway. Outside, the late afternoon air felt strangely calm. The kind of stillness that comes after a storm passes somewhere else. The company would face investigations. Maybe fines. Maybe restructuring. Those outcomes weren't my responsibility anymore. My responsibility had been protecting the license attached to my name. And I had done that. When I got home, my wife was watering the plants on the porch. She asked only one question. "Is it finished?" "Yes." We sat together for a while without speaking. Inside the house, our daughter was practicing piano. The notes drifted softly through the open window. Nothing dramatic. Nothing loud. Just quiet. That night, everything was quiet.